What is going on, guys? It is Cimo, and we have a very special guest here with us at the Bakugan event at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, the lead designer of the game itself, Mr. Justin. How are you today, Justin?
I'm doing great, man.
All right, yeah. So anyone who's watching this probably already saw the feature match where you completely bodied me in Bakugan, and I want to kind of elaborate on the competitive element of this game and how crazy this game really is when you start to like build your own deck. And so I kind of wanted you to do like a deck profile essentially, and kind of just talk about the basic mechanics of the game, but also like how in-depth and really dimensional this game really is.
Yeah. So you know, we built this game so that it can not just appeal to kids and the fun of opening up the toys and battling, but also has like deep strategy, an evolving metagame, tons of interesting stuff going on. So obviously when we were able to battle, you were able to see some of that with this deck that I beat you with, and I want to show you exactly what that strategy was, and maybe even hint at some of the other things that are going on out there. Like what's really exciting for me as a designer is being able to not only show off the stuff that we've come up with, but then start to see the things that the community and the fans are coming up with, and seeing how the metagame is going to evolve, not just at things like Emerald City Comic Con where we are now, but future events. We're going to be going to MomoCon, we're going to be going to Anime Expo, and having events all around the country where people can come and battle us and battle each other and really see who the true Bakugan masters are.
Sure, so let's go ahead and see what you got.
All right, let's talk about the deck. So, one of the things in Bakugan, typically you want to be able to have a variety of different factions, a variety of different colors, because you get access to more of the best cards. But this deck does something a little different. This deck goes Mono-Aquos. So only Aquos characters were picked, and the specific reason for that is because I want to maximize the power of the Flooding Waters card. Flooding Waters gives you plus 200 B power for per Aquos Bakugan you have on your team for only one cost. So for a one cost plus 600, that's the most efficient way you can actually pump up your B power. So the whole deck is built around being able to maximize B power so that I can almost win every fight that I encounter. And so to do that, I picked some of the highest B power Bakugan that were available in the color. So Fangzor starts up with 600 B power, only has one attack to begin with, but again, my goal is win the fights as often as possible, not do a ton of damage out of the gates. Hydrus Ultra, who has 400 B power and a very powerful Evo, which I'll talk about in a minute. And Pegatrix, who has 500 B power plus gets an additional bonus to B power whenever it picks up a shield. And to help with that, I also have using shields that give a huge B power boost, but only to Aquos and Heos. So if I'm playing against somebody who doesn't have Aquos and Heos, not only is this good for me, but it's actually not a useful core to somebody else. So by being able to focus on my colors, I'm able to maximize the use of the cores as well as the characters.
And that's just another layer of strategy to the game too, because you have not only the Bakugan, you have your deck, but then you also have the cores. So you have like 3 customizable variables essentially that can all be a part of your central plan or your win condition.
Exactly, and so as you start getting more involved in the advanced strategy of the game, you're going to start actually seeing how all these pieces come together to be able to build an optimized deck.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about the Evos. Hyper Hydrus Ultra, very efficient for only 3 costs, lets you get up to 700 B power, and it has an awesome Victor trigger. Victor means if you basically win the B power fight, or if you open uncontested, you get to use this power, which lets you play a card of cost 4 or less for free. So since I'm always trying to win the B power fights and have lots of ways to win early fights, my ideal scenario is I evolve on turn 3 with Hyper Hydrus Ultra, and then I use that to play for free one of my other evolutions. My favorite, of course, being Hyper Fangzor.
You and me both.
I come from a long background of trading card games, and whenever you can draw extra cards, it's always really powerful. Now, in Bakugan, you do have to counterbalance that with the fact that when you run out of cards, you can lose the game. So, but still, drawing some early cards is really powerful. A lot of B power, again, sticking with the deck's theme, and then this gives me enough fuel so I can continue to play cards and support the flow mechanic. So I'll break from the Evos for a second and talk about flow. So with flow cards, for example, Wave Slash, for 3 costs giving you 300 B power is not very efficient, but if you played another card this turn, it's going to give you 1,000 B power, which is a very efficient boost. So I also run a lot of cards that let me play things cheaply. You already saw the Tides card, but even cards that are like this 0 cost greater water boost. It only gives you 100 B power, so it's not a great use of a card, typically a card resource, but with flow, being able to energize flow and being able to help me play cards like Everett Ray, which I also have 3 of, which is a 6 cost hero, heroes stay in play and they give you a bonus every turn. So this one gives all my Bakugan a 200 B power boost. But if I can play multiple cards in the turn, including greater water boost, I can play this for cheap or even for free, like we did in our match. We actually had that pretty epic turn back and forth, where we both had Everett Rays that we were able to play for free, and you were able to come out over the top.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But because you want to do flow play, it means you want to play a lot of cards each turn. So drawing cards is critical. So again, that's where Hyper Fang Sword really does a lot of work for me.
Sure.
The last Evo we didn't really talk about is, sorry, I got these guys switched. Hyper Pegatrix. Hyper Pegatrix, again, just very, very efficient, and gets a huge boost when you pick up shields. This is actually my best way to do a lot of damage with a single character, because if you can pick up a shield, that's already going to be 11 damage just by default without any other boosts. So that's one of the better strikes. All right, and in addition, the other way that a somewhat more unorthodox pick to help with the card flow and help trigger all my flows is Strata, which makes each player draw an additional card each turn. It serves two purposes. One, as I mentioned, giving us more flow, fuel, basically the ability to play more cards to keep my V power up. And it also runs the game clock a little faster, right? Because, other than getting lucky with a Hyper Pegatrix and picking up a shield, my attacks are not that powerful. So running the game by drawing 2 cards a turn helps accelerate things. And so I'll always be ahead, but this helps me close out a game as well as keeping fuel for all my V power fights.
Right, and that's one of the most interesting things to me about this game is that your deck is your life. So in most card games, you want to draw as many cards as humanly possible, and everyone loves drawing. But at the same time, in this game, the more you draw, you're depleting your life total.
Correct.
And so it creates this very interesting dynamic from a card economy standpoint, where every time you're drawing, you have to consider, like, sometimes it's better not to draw cards.
Right.
Because you don't want to, like, risk of, like, just losing to a single attack, depending on how the numbers work out.
Right. Especially when you're getting low and you realize you're going to be subject to a big team attack, and if you draw one of your last flip cards, one of your last stops, you could completely lose the game, as opposed to leaving it in there, maybe having less resources to work with, but making sure that you can live to fight another day.
Sure.
So speaking of flip cards, why don't I show you the flip cards I've got here? So pretty standard, having counter outsiders. One of the costs of playing, which basically for 3 costs lets you stop any non-Aquos, so it covers a pretty big gap of people that you might want to stop. And I have 2 counter aggressions as well, which is a cheaper stop, which only stops the Pyrus or Chaos characters. The other thing, as I mentioned, card draw is really critical for this deck to be able to both power flow and win my B-Power fights. So I actually run 3 copies of Exhilarate. So even though it doesn't stop the damage, it helps me to keep ahead in the card fight and make sure that I win those B-Power fights when I have to. So this is another sort of thing where you're making those trade-offs. Being a Mono-Aquos deck, I don't have access to as many good stops as I normally would. By playing a lot of different colors, you get a lot better stop and flip access. So that's actually one of the weaker parts of this deck, is if you come at me with an Aquos character, I have no way to stop you. So I have to win those fights. So there's a lot of, that's where some of the risk comes in, and where, again, when we talk about a metagame, if this starts showing up in your area, you have some strategies to be able to come back and counteract me. And finally, I have just a couple of one-ofs, so I can pull off some pretty crazy moves. And both Mind Flood, which is functionally a kind of finisher. If you played a lot of flow cards in a turn, this thing can be a huge boost for a ton of damage. And Whirlpool, which not only gives you a damage boost, but also gives you 3 Frost Strike. So Frost Strike is really valuable because it makes all of the flip cards cost more to play. So a lot of times another strategy that a lot of people have been doing is they'll have a lot of defensive flips, right? They'll just be like, I don't care if I'm going to win every fight, I'll lose a bunch of fights, but I'm going to stop you constantly, and I'll only win 1 or 2 key fights that I need to win. Having access to some Frost Strike can really disrupt that strategy where they won't be able to use their flips. So again, another metagame choice. If you see a lot of people with a defensive stop strategy, you want to be using more Frost Strike as a mechanism to go ahead and combat that.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what's so fascinating from again a deck building standpoint is that you have to make those decisions. Like if you play like a Mono-Aquos deck or any mono deck, you're relinquishing some of that defensive capabilities that if you get like team attacked, you're more than likely, by the right Bakugan specifically, you're not going to be able to stop it.
Correct.
And then that's just a risk that you're running. But your deck has like so much offensive capability that you might not have to run that risk. And so it's kind of like that very interesting trade-off that you can make when you're in that process.
Right, and we we purposefully designed the game so that there's always going to be a counter strategy to every strategy that's out there, right? And the meta game will evolve. So this was one where I was able to kind of show it off, and it's really a powerful direct, taking advantage of flow, taking advantage of high B power, and so it's been a lot of fun. I may even show off some of my other cool decks, but I look forward to seeing. We can do the full layout here, so your viewers can actually see all the cards that we played with.
Get the numbers.
Get all the numbers. I'm not hiding anything here.
What a gentleman.
But I will tell you that if you start playing this regularly, we're also going to give you some tools to be able to beat it. So there we go, all laid out, and that is how I defeated the great Cimoooooooo.
What a perfect way to end the video, Justin. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and hopefully this gets more people excited about the competitive element of Bakugan.
My pleasure.